I've never actually added up the exact number of days, and it strikes me looking out at you now that a lot of you are terrifyingly young and may not even remember what it was like to live in the last months of 1989, or not remember it very clearly. But for those of us of my age, and even quite a lot younger, the sense of human emancipation that occurred with the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the implosion of the ossified form of Russo-communism that had been imposed on Eastern and Baltic Europe, and some of Balkan Europe, that sense is something I can still very vividly call to mind. I was in Romania at the time it actually happened, watching the overthrow of the Ceausescu regime, which was perhaps the most brutal and corrupt, as well as the one that was most centered on a cult of personality. And it wasn't just that it was extraordinary to see so many millions of people in so many different countries and societies simply by folding their arms and adopting an attitude of defiance, revolutionizing and changing their system. It wasn't that it was so moving to see that. It was the realization that the Cold War was over in the other way too. That it was quite likely now that we would not have to think every day of the possibility of a mistake or a crime or a blunder leading to what was euphemistically called in my hometown of Washington, D.C., a nuclear exchange. Imagine thinking of a thermonuclear holocaust as an exchange, but that was the way we tried to make the thought go away. It was an extraordinary period. And in those days, some of you will remember, and you can look it up, there was talk of a peace dividend, of the possibility of transferring the enormous resources that we've been putting into warfare into peaceful projects and into doing something about the real victims of the Cold War, who were the inhabitants of the countries we used to call the Third World. That there would be possibly a new internationalism, a new comity internationally, a new renunciation of force, some spare money, and a common feeling that the values of pluralism and democracy were worth having for their own sake, and had, so to speak, proved their worth in ideological combat against both fascism and Stalinism. It was a blissful time to be around, I tell you. That's November the 9th, call it. That's the day the Berlin Wall fell. Ceausescu fell actually not till Christmas Day, or Christmas Eve in Bucharest. So that's the end of 1989.